Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight on Inside D2 Football with Chuck Bittner, Matt Witwicky, Chris Ferguson, Devin Albertson, and Tony Nicolette. I am Brandon Meisner. Again, thank you very much for being with us tonight. Now, usually we give you a lot of things we're going to talk about, and there are a lot of things to talk about this week, but there is no doubt where we are going to start this week, and that is with the battle of number 1 versus number 2 in Big Rapids, Michigan. So for the first time since 2004, the number 1 and 2 teams in Division II met in the regular season contest. Grand Valley overcame a 21-10 Ferris State lead to start the fourth quarter and pulled out the win on the road, 22-21. So the win snaps Ferris's 19-game winning streak. And Tony Nicolette, you were one of 12,000 plus at the game. Tell us what you saw.
First of all, thanks to Ferris for hosting me and having all the folks there that they did. It was an awesome environment. I mean, you can't ask for anything better for the schools to be able to have so many people in the stadium. It's for such a big game. And then to have the teams actually put that kind of an exciting game together on the field for everyone to enjoy. I actually was walking around the concourse in the second half, and I mean, people were literally standing 4 and 5 deep. So if I wanted to stop along my progression to watch a play, I'm not the tallest guy. So, tiptoes and elbows and trying to get in so I could see what was going on. I mean, it was packed. And even a couple of little berm areas that they have there that people don't normally sit on were covered with people. I mean, it was just an awesome environment. So as far as the game goes, we saw a lot of what we expected in that these are two teams who understand both in terms of the GLIAC, and you and I have talked about over the years too, within Super Region 3, if you want to be able to win in November and December, you got to be tough up front. And these two teams, both in their offensive lines and defensive lines, played at an extremely high level throughout the game. You had little nuanced periods of time where one would maybe have an advantage over the other, and then the other would take it quickly back. In fact, one of the people on the Ferris staff in the press box at one point late in the first half just kind of said, man, this is a rock fight. And it was. I mean, it was just two heavyweights going after each other, and it was just really exciting to be a part of it. I think what really ended up changing as the game went on is, and especially in the fourth quarter, is the only position group that I was talking about between those two for Ferris and Grand Valley throughout the game that really gained any kind of a real foothold was the Grand Valley offensive line. And I mean, they really dominated in that fourth quarter. As you mentioned earlier, they were down 21-10, and Grand Valley had back-to-back touchdown drives. And on those two touchdown drives, they racked up 121 yards of their rushing total for the game on those two drives, the second of which was 5 plays, 83 yards, all on the ground. So you really saw Grand Valley's commitment to that power run approach with, whatever else they were going to mix in throughout the game, finally take a foothold and actually give them an advantage that allowed them to net the final result.
Tony, you mentioned the back-to-back scoring drives. I really thought on the second drive, the go-ahead drive, Grand Valley and that drive reminded me of what Ferris State has done to so many people recently, where they just, Grand Valley just ran it down their throat, quite frankly. And it was really pretty impressive to see the Lakers flip the script on what Ferris has done to so many others.
Right. And you and I've talked about this, and I've probably mentioned this a few times in our Sunday night shows, but when people see a team like Ferris that year in and year out scores, 40, 45, sometimes 48 a game and puts up all this offense, there's always kind of an assumption that there's a lot of passing involved. And make no mistake, they are able to do a lot in the pass game, but at their core, that is a run-first team, and they always have been. And Tony Anese's scheme that he uses is intended to really create a lot of confusion in terms of assignments and making sure that you have to be assignment sound, and they require an enormous amount of discipline and speed to be able to defend it. And then they get you looking and thinking and obsessed with what they're trying to do in the run game, and then they nail you with a really gifted athlete in space catching a pass, and then all of a sudden it's a big play. So they are a run-first team, and you're exactly right. Grand Valley, I'm not going to say they emulated it, but it did kind of have that similar type of a feel where, okay, they're going to run the ball and stick to what they're really trying to do to you in terms of the game to try and close you out.
You mentioned the pass, where they hit you with a surprise pass. I think they tried that, and I can't remember what point of the game, but they had the ball deep in their own territory, and they brought in Evan Cummins in to play quarterback. And so you're thinking run because they're deep in their own territory and would want to avoid a safety. They tried to go to the air with him. Grand Valley was able to defend it. I thought that was a big play.
Well, it was, and that just shows you again how aggressive and how under duress you constantly are when you're trying to defend a Ferris offense. So that actually was the series immediately after Grand Valley had a long drive at the end of the second quarter that they actually went for it on 4th and goal from the 3 and got when we're turned away. So they were Ferris was backed up against their own goal line with maybe a minute and a half or so left in the first half. And I think Malik Mitchell had gotten he'd had kind of hobbled off after the prior series. And so, hey, that's part of smart coaching, right? Is you send in the guy that you know is a running quarterback and make it look like you're just going to run the half out. And boy, they sure on that first play, they took a deep shot. And, Grand Valley was able to defend it. And then from that point on, then it was Ferris really just saying, okay, now we're going to run the clock out. So, yeah, you got to be ready for whatever punch they're going to throw at you at any situation, both in terms of time, down, distance, place on the field. You always have to be ready for it.
Well, yesterday, again, Grand Valley broke Ferris State's 19-game winning streak. And the quarterback in that game was Kade Peterson. In his Grand Valley career, he has almost 4,000 yards passing and over 900 yards rushing, and he has 52 combined touchdowns. And he joins us now. So, Cade, thank you and welcome to Inside D2 Football.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, Cade, the first thing that I want to touch on from yesterday's game is you guys got the first score up 7-0. Jack Provencher was as wide open as I've ever seen a player in a football game. Tell us about that play, what developed, and how you guys were able to get that wide open.
Yeah, really unique play. Obviously, like you saw, the guy was scot-free. Saw that they were on like a man-based principal defense, and the guy that had him in man came in on pressure, as you see, and once having to elude that, once he got his eyes, it was kind of no one there. So, really unique situation, high risk, high reward, and obviously it came out in our favor there. But got off to a hot start and really got things going. Obviously, we needed to stack a little more drives like that after, but we got it done eventually. So.
Hey, Cade, talk about the job that the Laker defense did yesterday. 81 yards rushing for Ferris State. That's actually only the 4th time in the Tony and East era that they've been held under 100 yards rushing. Obviously, that's pretty heavy lifting being done there. Talk about how those guys performed yesterday.
Yeah, our defense played incredible. Really happy for that whole unit and the leadership and all the guys over there. That's an explosive offense. They got a lot of talented players that can make moves in space, ram it up inside, spin the ball through the air. Like they're a dynamic offense, and they're always going to make good plays. When you got guys like that, a scheme like that, you have to know that they're going to make some good explosive plays and score some points. But the key is, get that job done when it's needed most. And obviously they did that there at the end of the game. So really happy for them, really proud of them.
Tony and I already talked about it, one of them. But I thought we talked about both of them, but there were 2 very impressive drives. One of the drives was the one before the end of the half where you guys didn't get any points. But I felt like it gave you a lot of momentum going into the second half because you were able to keep Ferris's offense off the field and giving them a chance with quite a few minutes on the clock to try to mount a drive. The second one, though, in my opinion, was more impressive. We said it earlier, 5 straight runs. You drove 83 yards. And like I said, it was reminiscent of what Ferris has done to other teams. What was the team's mindset on that go-ahead drive?
Yeah, honestly, it was just, one of those times where you got to look each other in the eye, when you get out there and know that if you stick true to what you've game planned and the talents of the guys in that group, that we can get the job done. So there was really no fracture, no flinch out of the guys. And it was awesome to see. It started off with Avery Moore's run that, that 25-yard run or whatever it was, breaking multiple tackles, like have a young guy like that step up in a role and really make a key play in that drive. And obviously went down there and punched it in, and Jack put the top on it. So it was really good. Awesome to see. And obviously was a pivotal moment in that game. So
obviously the offense came up big in a pivotal moment, right? In a crucial time frame. The defense had to do that same thing twice after that score. And the second came on a fumble that happened after the Lakers had actually taken the ball away from Ferris. Right. And it looked like they might have had a chance to salt it away. And 2 plays later, it's a sudden change. And now the defense is back on the field. So obviously you can speak firsthand to how the offense had their mindset put together for that drive because you were on the field for that. What did you see from the sideline and what did it tell you about the defense's mindset when they had to make that last stand after the turnover?
Yeah, I think it really stands true to the character of that defense and what they really build themselves on. You know, Coach Lewis, Coach Mitch, and the D staff, like they really have a good foundation of what they believe in our defense, and it really showed up there. A quick sudden change like that, like off a turnover in a game, with the stakes on the line, like all that good stuff, right? Like that's when you really need your guys to take a deep breath, lock in, execute what they need to do, and they really didn't flinch at all. They don't point and blame, say, "Oh man, the offense put us in this bad position," right? You never hear them say anything like that, and it's really awesome because it frees you as an offensive player. And you know, being here 5 years now, like I know a lot of the guys on defense and the type of people they are and the teammates that they are and the ball players they are. So, you know, they did an amazing job and it showed up.
You know, Cade, last year, I thought coming into this year, Grand Valley had a chance to have a really good team. And one of the reasons why is because you guys had a very successful season last year. And when we released our Elite 100 team, there was only one player on it. That says you've got a great balanced team. However, that one player is Abe Swanson. I thought he was fantastic yesterday. Tell the D2 world about Abe Swanson as a player because he's an impactful linebacker in my view. Exactly,
yeah. You know, Abe and I have been together on this ride for 5 years now. He came in the same class as me. He's one of my best friends. He's an exceptional football player, obviously. I think we all can see that. But the thing that makes Abe special is his intangibles, his leadership, and his mindset each and every day. Like when I'm not lying to you, like he is the first guy at the building going to the special teams meeting, to a defensive unit meeting. He's the last guy to leave. Everyone's got a positive relationship with him. He's just a really special and unique guy in all the best of ways. And he's a great person to have on the team because he brings a really unique skill set, and both leadership and his play. So I can't say enough about Abe. You know, he's the whole D2 world and everyone about college football should know about that guy.
So going back to the game yesterday, at the end of the game, you guys had the ball. I think it was Tariq Reed got a first down on the first play. You guys are icing the clock. We saw a big fist bump out of you. What were the emotions? What were your emotions at the time when you realized that you guys were going to win that game, that you had it secured?
Yeah, it was an overflow of emotions. It was an amazing feeling. This is my first time beating Ferris, and I've been here a while. So honestly, like it's just one of those things where it didn't really hit me at the moment. It was kind of one of those deals where it was it put me at a loss for words then, and it's put me at a loss for words now. So obviously a great game, and it can't be, you know, the highlight of our season. We need to keep going. But in that moment, I was just extremely happy that I got to share that moment with the players and coaches that are on our team, and to know that the hard work that we've put in, you know, throughout that week of game planning really paid off. So really happy for our guys.
Cade, backstage before the show, we were giving you a little bit of a hard time about how you've added some weight maybe since you were getting recruited out of Glen Lake High School in northern Michigan. So you've certainly changed physically since you've been at Grand Valley. Talk to us a little bit how you've grown and evolved in terms of just your ability to handle change, whether it's adversity or not. And the reason I ask that question is, you know, if you look at what's been asked of you in terms of your skill set, yeah, you've always been able to be both a strong passer and a strong runner. But it seems like Grand Valley this year is just focused on the run just that little bit more. And on top of that, you've actually been sharing a lot of time with Avery Moore and Cal Endicott. So having even from series to series, you might be asked to do something different than what you were expecting. So talk about how that growth has helped you both in terms of your play, but just in how it helps you plan for what you want to be as far as a person.
Yeah, well, when it comes to this unique situation of playing quarterback here right now, and the stat line, right? Like, we don't really focus too much on stats. That's a big prominent thing about our offense and our team, is that we understand that our team can go out and execute in both the run and the pass game whenever it need be. Looking at the first game, we were much more pass heavy, had to be. Colorado School of Mines was shutting down the run. Came out the second game and in some harsh conditions and ran the ball, almost the entire game. So it's really not something that we focus on too much about, what's the strength of our offense, because we believe that it differs week to week. Like, obviously up front, like they're the guys holding us down, rarely taking sacks, reestablishing the line of scrimmage. Like, those guys are the reason that we're having this success. If I were to point to an individual unit, I would definitely say our O-line is setting the tone for our offense. And then when it comes to, my playing time and the role that I have, is like, I say this just because, like, a lot of people, it's hard for them to understand, but the guys that are in the quarterback room and the guys that play on offense, like, it is truly a brotherhood and it is truly family. Like, I am so excited whenever I see Avery and Cal have those success, because they are great ball players and they've earned every single one of their accomplishments. So, they both bring really, really unique and really, really good skill sets to our team. And, that whatever that looks like week to week, we don't know. I don't know. I do what is asked from the coaching staff, and that is to run the offense with the play that's called. So I think that these experiences that I've had right now and so far this season, and building off of last season, playing in high stakes games, rotating out, like, those are going to set me up for the rest of my life, just on how to, deal with certain situations. And I know it's going to be the same thing for them. So it's a credit to our coaches. It's a credit to our players and the relationships that we have on this team. So
you mentioned that the quarterback room is a unique situation. Another unique situation is that you have two brothers on the team, Drew, who is a sophomore, and Brett, who is a freshman. Now, I was talking to somebody from Grand Valley earlier, and they said that you played with Drew in high school, but Brett was far enough, separated in age that you weren't able to play with him. COVID's, wreaked a lot of havoc, but it's given you another year. How special is that you might be able to play with both brothers on the same team one year?
Yeah, obviously it's really special, and it's something that I'm going to have these memories for the rest of my life, obviously. So, having two younger brothers on the team, it means the world to me. It means the world to them. We all have different roles, and our situation on this team looks different from one another. But, having these guys here in Allendale and being able to step out on the practice field every single day with them, like, it's a blessing. It's a blessing for my family. I know my parents are extremely proud, and I'm happy that they get to watch all three of their boys, play the game they love and at a place they love. So it's just awesome. I can't say enough about it.
Very cool. So I'm going to take you back to Glen Lake. So, yeah. Very small town, right? Smaller team. I want to say, I think your senior year, they might've been playing Division 6, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Division 6 or Division 7.
State of Michigan, right? Which is towards the smaller end. That would be
I think my high school had around 200 people total enrollment.
Sure. So when you come to a university that's the size of Grand Valley State in a metropolitan area, that, albeit not the biggest, it's still bigger than a lot of what you're going to see in northern Michigan. Talk about how that small town and family type of close-knit community that you grew up in has impacted you as you've met and interacted and built a brotherhood and a teammate hood with all these different guys from larger cities, different types of families, just everything that you see, that everybody's so different. How did that prepare you for being able to form a good bond with all those guys?
Yeah, well, it set me up in a way that was different than a lot of people. Obviously, I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm extremely happy for the way that I grew up. It was a small rural town, like you said, and those are really unique. There's a really community feel, a really like that hometown bond that you have like on a Friday night, like that is very much true. But coming to Grand Valley has allowed me to really find out myself and really teach myself how to interact with different people, how to go about different situations. Like I can't even begin to explain, but just having the differences in how my situations have been in high school compared to college. It's been great because they've been different, and by me having that exposure in both ways really has gave me some good perspective on a lot of things. So
All right. Well, Cade, congratulations on the win yesterday. Good luck next week against Northern Michigan, correct?
yeah.
Great. So, again, thank you very much for joining us. Good luck against Northern Michigan.
All right. Thank you, guys. Can't thank you enough for having me.
Thank you. So that's Kade Peterson, the starting quarterback for what will be the number 1 ranked Grand Valley State Lakers. So 1 versus 2 doesn't happen very often. The last time we think it happened, or at least I know it happened, was 2004. And so it's a special game and deserves the attention we're giving it. So, Chuck, I know you were able to watch the game on Flow Sports, and I'd like to know what your observations, your thoughts on the game were, a game of this magnitude.
Well, first of all, I was just really happy to see the game live up to our expectations. We worked really hard to promote this and give the attention that it deserves for these players and athletes who really deserve that. And it was fun to listen to Tony talk about the atmosphere there at the stadium, because I think that really came through on the broadcast as well. You could really see how packed it was, how much excitement and how much energy there was. Rob and Sandy did a great job of really helping bring the audience into the stadium and try to help feel what it was like there. So it was exciting to watch. It was a great event for D2. It was a great showcase. Mm-hmm. I said in my column this morning, it's really hard to take a game like that and boil it down into a couple sentences. Right. But a couple things that really stood out to me. It was pretty interesting the way both teams were able to take one of their opponents' biggest threats and really kind of neutralize it to an extent. Caleb Murphy is one of the best defensive football players in Division II, and Grand Valley's offensive line had an answer for him. They did a phenomenal job. He really didn't have a huge impact in the game. Now, he commands a lot of attention, so you can certainly say that that's an impact in and of itself. But he really didn't have the type of impact that we typically see from him. So just a great job by the Grand Valley offensive line working on him and working their run game. It was interesting that Grand Valley actually executed the quarterback run game considerably better than Ferris State did. In fact, Ferris really didn't even have that in their game plan very much, which surprised me. They obviously didn't think that was going to work very much. I think Gulker only had 1 carry in the game, really only made 1 appearance in the game. So, that says to me that the Ferris coaches just didn't really think that was going to work against Grand Valley State. And they may have been right. But that was very interesting to see how that played out. But, really what really lives with me is that you have to beat Ferris at the line of scrimmage. If you're going to beat them, you have to be able to play their game and contend with them at the line of scrimmage. And Grand Valley not only did that, but I thought that they were a lot better at the line of scrimmage. So their pass rush was intense all day. I thought Malik Mitchell actually did a really good job combating that as much as he could, especially having missed a month of the season. I thought he played really well dealing with that intense pass rush, and there was a lot of pressure on him because they didn't really run the ball that much. So just so many things that you could go to, so many things you could talk about. I think one of the things that Kade Peterson said that I really liked is, for Grand Valley, this can't be the highlight of their season. Huge win. They really needed this. I mean, when you are as good of a program as they are and you have lost to your rival as many years consecutively as they had, that's really, really tough to take for the players, the coaches, the fan base. They really needed this one. But there's bigger things out there for them to do, and they're probably going to see this team again. I hope they do, because, selfishly for us, I want to see them play again. But I really liked what Cade said there. This can't be the highlight of their season.
Yeah, and lest anyone think that Ferris State is just going to slink off into the darkness and and not be a factor here as the season moves on. I mean, I don't think we can't lose sight of the fact that they were a play or two away from finding a way to win this game themselves, right? I mean, they had the ball twice in the last 3.5 minutes where all they needed was a field goal. They still had a significant offensive output in this game from the standpoint that, Chuck, as you mentioned, they didn't run the ball that well. And yet, I mean, you can take whatever arbitrary measure of chunk plays you want. For this case, I'm using 15 yards. Ferris still had 9 plays in that game of 15 yards or more. The difference from what maybe you usually see is that 7 of them came in the pass game. So, and a lot of those chunk plays were guys running really free with nobody near them. And that's kind of a risk reward, I think, approach maybe the Lakers were taking in terms of how they wanted to try and defend. They were willing to try and sacrifice some of the back end to be able to try and put pressure on Mitchell and make him make decisions or throws more quickly. So they hit on several huge plays where guys were running free and there was nobody near them. Now, when it came to contested catches, and this is one of the things that I for as much time as we spent on the trenches, and I talked about this in the open, the one thing that I also think that might get overlooked is the quality of play that we saw from the back end of the Grand Valley defense, both in terms of their ability to defend any of the 50-50 type plays or any of those deeper balls that might be one-on-one in coverage. But in the run game, Grand Valley had 10 total tackles for loss in this game. If you take the sacks out, it was 7. And only one of those 7 tackles for loss came from the defensive line. It all came from either Abe Swanson or guys on the back end like Antonio Strong or Therese Reed. The back end of Grand Valley's defense in defending the run and the outside passing game was really, really good. And I think I know where you're going in terms of what Ferris wanted to take away outside of some of the Grand Valley things. So I'll give props too. Ferris's secondary played real well too. Sidney McLeod did a great job on Jade Walker. It was a heck of a matchup where you could see the chess match going from almost series to series.
Yeah,
you know what?
I think I'll just follow up on that real quick. I think Jade Walker and Cody Tierney combined for 1 catch. So yeah, there was some work going on in that back half for Ferris too. Yeah, Whit, I know you watched it and had a lot of reactions too.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw Tony, one of the first things that jumped out to me is Marcus Taylor is maybe the most explosive player in Division II football. I mean, he is way lightning fast. And I mean, some of the plays you saw yesterday when he got an open space, I mean, he was just turbo and gone. And I mean, frankly, if he doesn't make 2 real big plays there, I mean, they would have had some more challenges scoring points in that game. I thought Grand Valley's defense was that good. I really did. Some of the other things I mean, Chuck kind of mentioned it. I thought the ability for Grand Valley to pressure Malik Mitchell was a huge factor in this football game. I thought that they knocked him off his spot, forced him into some throws that normally he's going to have a lot of high percentage throws in that offense. And he missed a few where they would have had some big yards. And, just having a chance to kind of watch this game, having watched pretty much everybody in every other conference, I walked away from this game saying that this game had a different level of ability and athleticism than every other game or team I've seen this year. I mean, I thought it was just on another level. And I think that people don't realize how good Grand Valley's defense is to hold Ferris like they did yesterday. And when they have some other teams that they go against in the playoffs, look out. They're gonna throw some low numbers, I think. I really do.
It could be. And being there in the stadium, and again, this is the second straight week that I've watched Ferris in person. You're dead on about Malik Mitchell. That's or Malik Taylor. That is a great assessment. But the thing of it is if as you watch them in the games, guys like Brandon Childress and Tyrese Hunt Thompson, they're every bit as fast or darn near. Malik might be mad that I said that, but I mean, when you watch those guys run and move, and guys like Childress and Hunt Thompson are actually bigger than Taylor is. I mean, so it's like when you think about what it takes to defend that, it is daunting. It is absolutely daunting. So you're right. What Grand Valley did yesterday to keep them to 381 yards of total offense. I mean, again, that sounds like a lot, but when you're defending Ferris, that's yeoman's work to get that done.
Right. I also found it very interesting that they moved, Taylor to running back in a lot of conventional running back carries. And, the leading rusher that they have that gets like one touch. I think it speaks a lot to what Chuck was mentioning, that they felt the need to kind of give Grand Valley a little bit different look. And we're not going to do exactly what you're expecting and things like that in the way that they went about that, instead of just a regular jet sweeps with him.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why we didn't see more Zamir Knighton, because he's given a lot of people fits this year. So, yeah, I that was a conspicuous absence, too. I didn't see or notice that maybe if he got dinged and wasn't able to do more. I really can't answer why they were going away from some of that personnel, but it's a good observation, Whit, and I think we've even had some folks on the message boards who made note of similar things, saying, hey, if we're stuck using slot guys to try and bang it in between the tackles, that compromises what they're trying to do with their core. So I'm not sure why that thing took hold, but it definitely was noticeable. You're dead on with that.
All right. Guys, fantastic week of I hope we have this more often, because it was an absolute joy to have the lead up, have the game meet our expectations, and then be able to talk about it tonight. So it was great in 2004, and I hope it happens again before I'm too old to run this website. So.
All 2s and 1s in the final score, even. I mean, for heaven's sake,
exactly.
How does it get any more perfect than that?
Yeah, and a very clean game too. We actually got to talk about this with Cade a little bit before we went on the air, and I think that's worth mentioning. Rivalry games like this at all levels sometimes tend to get a little sideways with personal fouls and chippiness and all that stuff, and we just didn't really see any of that. So I think that's a credit to both coaching staffs and all the players.
All right, let's go ahead, guys. And there were actually other football games that happened this weekend. And one of those games was a great CIAA matchup. Jada Byers ran for 277 yards, and Virginia Union was able to hold off Bowie State in overtime 24-21. Virginia Union moves to 7-0. Chris is our CIAA columnist, but Chuck, you were at the game and you were able to see the Panthers take control of the CIAA North.
Yeah, well, it's interesting follow-up to the game we just talked about, because there are some similarities there. Virginia Union is a very good football team and a winning football team. They have been for a long time, but they have not been able to get past Bowie State for the last several years. And now they have this really good team. We've been talking about them. We've been socializing what they've been doing, and we're starting to project where they could be towards the end of the season. But they had to beat Bowie State. They just had to get into the CIAA championship game, which they haven't done yet. I like their chances, but they're not there yet. But they had to win this game, and I was very happy to see them do it. Nothing against Bowie State, because they're just an awesome program too. But I think they really need this. I think it's good for the CIAA to have somebody that can challenge the champ and take them down and do it on their field, which I think we've seen in the last couple of years. I mean, Bowie State is where ranked teams go to die. That is a tough place to play and a tough place to win. It was a great atmosphere, pretty much a packed house, beautiful day, a little windy, but beautiful day. I was really excited to see Jada Byers play. That was honestly one of the main attractions for me to go. I really wanted to see Jada Byers play. And it's fun when big-time players step up in big-time games, because he was a stud. And for that matter, so was Dion Golot, the quarterback at Bowie State, who I really like. I thought he played really well also. So lots of great plays on both sides of the ball. A little bit of a test of endurance too. It was a long game. It was 4 hours just to get to the end of regulation, and then we go into overtime. So it was almost a 4.5 hour game. But I think one of the things that kind of stood out, Jada Byers is most of Virginia Union's offense. If you look at the numbers, he is most of their offense. But I think that Virginia Union passing game is deceptively good. Like, they make plays when they really need to have them, and they make just enough plays with that passing game that if you start to think we're going to sell out to stop Jada Byers, you're going to get burned. And the Virginia Union quarterback play was I thought very good. The numbers may not be spectacular. I thought he played extremely well. And they have some receivers that can go up and make contested catches too. So I thought that was an element of the game that I wasn't really prepared to see. And I think it was a huge difference in how it played out. So I've already been talking for way too long. Ferg, what did you see?
Well, what I was really wanting to see was the battle in the trenches, because Virginia Union has this rotation of about 8 deep on the defensive line, and they have an offensive line that, I mean, I'm a big guy. I'm like 6 feet, and I weigh too much right now after the pandemic, and they dwarf me. And then Bowie State has this vaunted line that headlines a guy who's on the Senior Bowl watch list, Joshua Pryor, and they've always been really, really good. And they just kind of went at each other. So even though Bowie State gave up, 277 yards to Jada Byers, they also got 5 sacks. And so did Virginia Union. I mean, it was a very physical game. And I think you kind of saw that depth and physicality in overtime, because when they have been going to Bowie State have been going to Larry Williams, who was like the backup quarterback, and they have been using him in this kind of wildcat package, and it had been picking up first downs and short yardage situations. Well, they're down to the 2, and they run that play like 3 times, and they can't get into
four
the
plays
end
in a
zone.
row. Four plays in a row,
and they can't get into the end zone. I mean, it was a vintage Bowie State goal line defense, but on the other team. I mean,
that was awesome. That was awesome. By the way, though, I liked the decision to go for the touchdown there.
Yes.
You're at the 2-yard line. I liked the decision to go for the touchdown there. And then, man, when Virginia Union stopped that, then you think, okay, you just got to get like maybe 10 yards here. Jada Byers, will you give it to him 3 times, get 7, 8, 10 yards, set up a nice field goal. Well, Virginia Union actually just loses 2 yards on that set of downs, and they have to kick a 42-yard field goal. But I don't know if you saw on video, that field goal, it got nice and high, but boy, it was like a slow-moving kick, and I think it came over the crossbar by about a yard. But and then excitement ensues. But that goal line stopped there once Bowie was inside the 5-yard line. And they essentially ran the same play 4 plays in a row, and Virginia Union stopped it. You're absolutely right, Ferg. I think that's where the physicality of the game really kind of went in Virginia Union's favor. And that was interesting, too, because we know how good that Bowie State defense is and how good they are at the line of scrimmage. But both sides of the ball, Virginia Union was their match for sure.
I just want to point out, so Dr. Parker, who's the head coach of Virginia Union, we do a weekly press with him. And after a game earlier this season, we kind of talked about Brady Myers, who kicked the winning field goal, and he's a freshman. He's a true freshman. And we just talked about, you tried a field goal from 46 yards. What was your thinking behind that? And he said, I'll trust him, all the time with that type of kick. And he tried that early in this game. Well, he tried a 46-yarder, and he just really hooked it. So for him to try,
had plenty of distance, though. Yeah, plenty of distance.
And so for him to put it on the line on that freshman kicker, and he actually converted. I mean, that just shows how much faith he had in that kicker to end this game. I thought that was amazing too.
Yeah, and I love to see those situations where a player who either makes a mistake or misses a play earlier in the game gets another chance and comes through. Because he did miss. So I think it was right near the end of the first half. He actually missed it twice because there was a timeout. He kicked and missed it, but they kicked again. I think it was a penalty or timeout. Missed it again. And that's obviously 3 points that get you the win in regulation. But he came back and made the big kick in crunch time. So that was really cool.
Yeah. Right. So just real quick. So Bowie State, Virginia Union, 2 of the worst penalized teams in the country. This actually went the wrong way for Virginia Union. There's probably one of the blemishes on this game. They had 13 penalties for 123 yards. So they got to clean that up as we look forward in the rest of the games. But that was one of the hurdles that they did have to overcome in this game.
Yeah.
Right. There was another very important game in Super Region 2, and it was a game versus ranked teams. Grand Valley and Ferris was not the only game featuring ranked teams. In the SIAC at the beginning of the year, I talked about how Albany State might be the team that would go undefeated in Division II and really could be a contender for, the bye, the number 1 seed. Well, apparently Benedict wanted no part of that scenario because the Tigers might have replaced Albany State in that scenario. Right now, they're 7-0. They're in the driver's seat in the SIAC after a 24-20 win over Albany State.
I have to
pay the fee?
There you go.
Did you pay the fee?
All right, Chris, I'm buying in. I'm paying the fee. I'm gonna say to Benedict Tigers, I believe. I picked against them against Savannah State. I picked against them against Fort Valley State. I was this close to picking against them against Albany when I first wrote my column. I had Albany State winning the game, and right at the last minute, I said, no, I think maybe it's Benedict's time. And I changed my pick, and I went with the Tigers. So I believe they are for real. They're a great team. Played really well in this game. I think their quarterback, I want to make sure I get his name right. Eric Phoenix. Do I have that right, Chris?
Yep.
Eric Phoenix. I think he is probably going to be the SIAC Offensive Player of the Year. He was a big factor in this game, just so efficient with the ball. Throws the ball really well, runs the ball well, and it was just so efficient. I think it was like 22 of 28 and had a bunch of yards in that game. So, if I'm not mistaken, a second time this year that they ruined an opponent's homecoming game. And by the way, they had almost as many people at Albany State on Saturday as Ferris State had. It was just under 12,000 people at that game to see this.
You can see that, and actually some of the highlights have been. I've been there. It's a great place to watch a game. It could probably have, with the way the field's constructed, it could probably have 30,000 there. I was there for a Tuskegee Albany State game, and very, very enjoyable game. Of course, that's a long time ago because I'm pretty old. But
so, Chris, I don't know if you have a strong opinion on this or a strong thought on this, but I mean, Benedict is going to be in the championship game. If you look at their next 3 games, they're going to win those games. Who do you think they're going to be playing?
Well, I think it's going to be Tuskegee, and Tuskegee and Kentucky State got to play each other. That's probably going to decide the West Division. What's really interesting, so Tuskegee and Central State played yesterday, and they kind of rivaled another game we'll talk about later on. But they had over 700 yards of offense in that game, and what Retro Ruffin's been able to do at Tuskegee and sort of reviving the Golden Tigers has been huge. And so, to me, I think that's who the opponent's going to be looking a couple of games down the road.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it'll probably be Tuskegee. There's still some tough games for them to play, but I think it'll probably be Tuskegee.
So correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but are there 3 undefeated teams in SR2? Virginia Union, Benedict, and Delta State. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
That's correct.
Right.
Okay. So obviously, as we get closer to the end of the season, those are the 3 that would be most likely, vying for the bye. We haven't run the numbers yet, but later on, when it makes more sense, we will, to try to figure out who might be. But nonetheless, Albany State, I thought you guys had it at the beginning of the year, and Benedict has flipped the script, and it's made it more interesting. That's for sure. So, all right, guys, those were not the only top 25 games. Man, there's a lot going on this past weekend.
There's three conferences that had what is essentially the game of the year in that league. The GLIAC, the CIAA, and the SIAC probably all had their biggest game of the regular season this past Saturday.
Yeah, it was incredible. I'm going to go ahead and share our tab and look at the results of the top 25. I'm going to bring this up, and we'll talk about different games that happened. Let's start Super Region 3. Henderson State beats Harding 15-14. Whit, I thought, and we all kind of assumed Harding was going to win out. The Reddies had other ideas. Both teams have 2 losses now.
Yeah, I mean, a real low-scoring special. Eventually, Harding gets out to a 14-6 lead, which seemed like a big lead at that point in the third quarter. And then they fumble at their own 30-yard line, and Henderson cashes in. And all of a sudden, things are starting to change a little bit. Henderson gets another field goal, and all of a sudden takes the lead, and they're able to hold on. But Henderson was able to keep keep Harding's offense down to just 236 yards on the ground, which sounds, silly to anybody else, but when that's the way that they move the football, that's a low number for them. And 4 yards a carry. And at the same time, Harding, a lot of self-inflicted wounds here. They put the ball on the deck 5 times, losing it 3 times, in the process. And Henderson's able to escape there, and both teams are sitting there now with 2 losses.
Right, in the GLIAC/GLVC, Saginaw Valley beats number 16 UIndy 38-14. Saginaw really dominated that game.
I actually saw it going that way. I mean, I thought it would be closer than it was. UIndy did have to play without their starting quarterback, and he's actually a big part of their run game. But, when I wrote my column last week, I mentioned that Toriano Clinton, who's the outstanding running back at UIndy, averages about 178 yards per game. I didn't think he would need that much for them to win, but I was thinking he'd need probably about 125 to 140. But he had 45 yards in the game.
Right.
So that's a really bad sign. That's just not a recipe for success. But, Saginaw's defense and special teams played really well. It wasn't a great day for Saginaw offensively, but a great bounce back win. When you play Grand Valley and Ferris in consecutive weeks, and those are really, really tough physical games. I know Tony wrote about that in his column. That's tough to come back then and play another team that's really good, and they were undefeated. So I thought it was a fantastic win for Saginaw, and probably puts them back into the discussion about playoffs within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Chuck, too. And I think that speaks to the type of resiliency that Ryan Brady's trying to build within that Saginaw Valley program, is for that defense to come out. And I get that it was a second string quarterback for Indianapolis, but they still threw for close to 300 yards in that game and completed a high percentage of their passes. But Saginaw did a great job. They had one long kick return that set up a short field for a score. And then they actually had 4 interceptions in this game, only ended up +2 in the turnover margin. But on those 4 interceptions, they had 171 yards, I believe it was, in returns. And none of those went back for touchdowns. So when you're giving your offense the ball back and with short fields like that all the time, it kind of takes the load off them a little bit. And hey, when you're recovering from the 2 games that they had against a quality opponent, to go out and fight hard like that and figure out ways to win, that's the sign of a team that's actually stronger than maybe they were made to look the last couple of weeks.
Right. In the MIAA, Emporia State, this one was surprising to me, beats number 13 Nebraska Kearney, and they did it handily, 44-21.
Yeah, Nebraska Kearney had a few injuries in the secondary, I think, going into this one. So they were a little bit weak back there, just with bodies kind of deal. Braden Gleason, normal self kind of deal, threw for 275 and a touchdown. But it was their running game, 277 yards at 7.5 yards a carry. They did whatever they wanted to on offense. It was a perfectly balanced game there for the Hornets. They held TJ Davis to 53 yards rushing, under 200 yards of all purpose on the day. And Kearney actually went up 7-0 in this game, and Emporia State outscored them 44-7 until late in the fourth quarter, including a 27-0 run from late in the first half into the fourth quarter. So it was a great dominant performance for Emporia State, and they're a team to keep an eye on there in Super Region 3 that could make some noise here down the stretch.
Another Super Region 3 game back from the MIAA, Devin. Northwest Missouri survives Washburn 32-30.
Yeah, this game got really interesting late. I actually had a wedding yesterday, so I had to rewatch this game afterwards to see what happened, because I saw Washburn went up 24-23 with like 7 minutes to go. Northwest gets the ball back, goes down the field. Mike Hohensee in at quarterback this week for the Bearcats. He finds his receiver Griffin for a touchdown. You pull him up by 5. They don't get the 2-point conversion. About 2 minutes left. Washburn goes right down the field in about a minute and a half, scores their quarterback on a scramble, Simoncic, 10 yards out. Washburn goes up a point. They don't get the 2-point conversion. Northwest is a good kickoff return back out to about almost the 40-yard line. Hohensee has 2 great passes there to get him in field goal range. A little 12-second drive kind of deal. They get there, kick the field goal from about 36 yards out and get the win. Cole Lamels, he's perfect on the year so far for the Bearcats kicking. So kind of a win there for Northwest that we hadn't seen this year, with them having to score over 30 points and having to move a little more on offense because they're playing a Washburn team that is number 1 in the conference in scoring. So that was a good win for Northwest, so they can win in a different way other than just winning 20-17 kind of deal. It was kind of a nice little change of pace for them.
Well, it makes for an interesting situation. I think it's let me pull this up, guys. Let's look at this. Super Region 3, There are tons of teams with 2 losses or fewer. And if you look at that, I mean, a bunch of these guys are not making the playoffs. I was sent a scenario, Matt, from a friend, and he said it's very possible, at least in his estimation, that there could be 3 GLIAC, 2 GLVC, 1 GAC, and 1 MIAA team in the playoffs this year. That could be the composition. What is your opinion on that?
I could see that because if you take a look here, guys, at what's on the page, just at the teams that are better than 2 losses, you're going to be looking at Pitt State, Ouachita, Grand Valley. I think we all probably feel that Davenport is probably, as they get into the tough part of their schedule, they're probably going to have a hard time staying up at that spot because they have Grand Valley, Ferris, Saginaw, they have all them ahead.
Right.
So then from there, I mean, Truman is the team that no one really is kind of talking about. And with them being at 5-1 right now, they and Indianapolis both have a good strength of schedule. So their numbers are both going to be more favorable than a 2-loss MIAA team. And I think that's a huge factor because if you take a look, when Truman and Indy play, I think last week of the season, one of them, is going to be in with 1 loss if things were to hold up. The other one's going to have 2 losses, but will still be kind of at the front of the line ahead of the MIAA and the GAC teams who play in the silo scheduling. So it's kind of like, unless some things really start to change, those 2-loss squads that are in the MIAA and the GAC could be in real trouble because Saginaw Valley also is going to have a sky-high strength of schedule. So it's just really interesting to see kind of what's shaping out with the possibility of Truman maybe being on that 7 line.
And if you look at the MIAA, what they're going to happen, Central Oklahoma, they still have to play. I think they still got to play Pitt State. Emporia still plays Northwest. Northwest still plays Kearney and Emporia. So those teams could all be. We might only have one team in the MIAA with under 2 losses this year, anyways. By the time we get to the end of the season, and at that point, if you're a 3-loss MIAA team, you're going to be outside looking in. You're not getting in at that point. So either Emporia or Northwest or one of these teams has to win out here to even have a chance to even be in that conversation later in the year, kind of, because the conference just might eat itself alive this year.
All right. Let's go ahead and bring back the top 25 results. First, let's talk about Augustana. They survived Wayne State at home with a comeback win, 31-27. Whit, you were there.
Yeah, kind of a wonky first half. A lot of penalties, a lot of teams having to kind of, being moving back and trying to overcome all that. 17-9 Augustana at halftime. Then Wayne makes a little bit of a run. Their quarterback, Nick Bone, I think he carried the ball 26 times for like 80 yards. I mean, he really had, some tough going, but a lot of anytime they were 3rd and short, he was taking a carry. And it looked like they were going to win the game. They scored late, and all of a sudden they get another pick. And I'm like, okay, Augie's is in a tough spot here. Augie gets themselves down to the 20-yard line. They're about ready to do a field goal, 14 seconds left. And all of a sudden they do a pump and go for a touchdown in the corner of the end zone. And I'm thinking, how come Wayne State, I'm thinking the safety's got to come over and make that play. And it was wide open. And it was a tough deal for Wayne State. All of a sudden, kind of a shocking loss when it looked like Augie was probably just going to line up and try a field goal. So kind of a shocker there. And it ends up being a really big result in Super Region 4 because now Augustana is one of the few teams with just 1 loss. And Wayne kind of moves into the pile of teams that have 2 losses.
Well, the Javelinas keep winning somehow. Texas A&M Kingsville, undefeated.
Somehow. That wasn't very nice, Brandon.
Well, it's by the skin of their teeth every week. So they're threading a needle.
Well, here's the thing about Kingsville. It's easy to doubt them because their schedule hasn't been great to this point. They are 7-0. The schedule hasn't been great. They really struggled with Permian Basin last night on homecoming. They had almost 10,000 people for their homecoming, but they almost got beat by UTPB. Now, Permian Basin's a competent team, but Kingsville trailed almost the whole game. They had to get a late score. They win that game 13-10. So that's not very inspiring. But, you know, we're going to find out who they really are. They go to Angelo this week. So we'll find out this Saturday night if they are a real legitimate contender in the LSC or if they've been a paper champion so far. So we'll find out.
They trailed last week. I mean, they were trailing to Western New Mexico last week.
Yes,
like into the game.
Case in point. I think you're proving the point there, Chris.
Yeah.
They just somehow keep finding a way to win. Maybe they'll continue. I think it's fun. I talk about history a lot. When I first started really paying attention to Division II nationally, Texas A&M Kingsville was a juggernaut. I mean, like those are people that you did not want to play. They were going to punch you in the face. And
they were
how they did it. And
they were one of the first names that I became familiar with outside of the conference that I was, part of, where I went to school and the teams I saw. That was one of the first names that I became aware of nationally. So it is good to see them having success again.
In addition, Texas A&M Kingsville has more people in the Pro Football Hall of Fame than Texas A&M. So they like to spout that, and I just thought I would add that. So another result in Super Region 4, Sioux Falls comes from 14 down, struggled with Mary, but ended up winning 41-27.
Yeah, so I'm over at Augustana, and all of a sudden I get a text message that USF is down 20-6 against Mary. And I had said in my little, column that this may be a trap game for Sioux Falls because Mary is much better than their one win would suggest. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, well, then USF went on like a 17-play, 75-yard drive. And I think Thurl Reisdorfer might have gotten every carry. And all of a sudden, he goes over 200 yards, has 3 scores. Ferg, that's all right up your alley. And
he's not on our team though.
Sioux Falls just keeps on kind of powering ahead. I think they passed the ball 9 times in the football game, two times for scores, I think. And all of a sudden they just kind of power ahead of Mary late and end up winning the football game. But certainly a concern for USF fans that Mary was able to have that kind of day and even kind of give you that much of a threat.
All right, let's go ahead and look at Super Region 4 as well, guys. We have 12 teams with 2 or fewer losses. What do you make of this, Whit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is always the Super Region I'm the most familiar with, being the Northern Sun columnist. I found it interesting, and I think that we've kind of seen that this may be cooking for a little bit now. It looks like the RMAC may only end up getting 1 team in. I think that's a real possibility because no one's really asserting themselves as the number 2 team in the conference. And frankly, Colorado Mines is just destroying people, just throwing them aside right now in the RMAC. And I mean, they're the team that no one wants to have come in there, show up in their yard, as a road team in round 1. But moving past that, if you only have 1 team in the RMAC, and then from there you go ahead and you look at the Lone Star, the Lone Star is going to have Angelo State without a doubt, then probably Kingsville, and Central Washington right now, they're kind of in the middle of that group that's beating up on each other, so it's hard to say that they're going to be there. So that means that we're talking about only 3 spots taken. That would leave potentially, I mean, if you look at it, a lot of Northern Sun on that page, guys.
Mm-hmm.
You could be looking at Sioux Falls, Augustana, and then for example, upcoming, we've got some games this weekend, guys, with like Bemidji and Duluth and games like that, where they're almost going to serve almost like a playoff elimination game. And the idea that one conference could even have it, in the crosshairs that they could get 4 teams in seems just wild to me.
Right. Well, one of the things with that you actually see if you look at the records here, Texas A&M Kingsville is 7-0 overall. They're undefeated, but they have 2 non-countable games for playoffs, and that could be a factor at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point.
Because their overall D2 winning percentage, win-loss record may not be as good.
Right, because if they get saddled with a loss this week against Angelo, which we're probably expecting that to happen, I mean, I think most people would, then that's going to come into play, just like you mentioned, Chuck.
All right, guys, it is shaping up to have an incredible end to the season. It's a really interesting season so far with Ferris losing, maybe Northwest might be on the outside looking in. Some new teams, Kingsville. Lots of storylines to follow this year. It's going to be fun to see how it all plays out. So
give me all the chaos. All the chaos. I'm here for it.
may you live in interesting times was an ancient Chinese curse. And I think that we are certainly living in interesting times. So a few other things to point out before we move on to next week. Truman State beat Southwest Baptist, and that was the 600th program win for Truman State. Historically, Truman State was in the MIAA. They were Northeast Missouri State, and they were the best program in the league before Pitt State came in and started smacking everybody around. So congratulations to them. One thing I saw that was interesting today, because I didn't know, Robert Saleh, the head coach of the Jets, was a Northern Michigan alum. And the Jets beat Saginaw Valley, which is coached by Matt LaFleur, who I did know was a Saginaw Valley player. So, because that was during the D2Football.com era. So I thought that was pretty interesting. We had 2 D2 head coaches in that game. And a thing, and I know that everybody talks about it in the comments, but next week, the NCAA will be releasing the first set of teams that are in the top 10. Now, understand it's a set of teams in alphabetical order. It's not the rankings. So we are going and we will attempt to sort that out even before the NCAA gives them, because they're not going to give you the actual rankings until the selections are made. Is that the way you understand it, Chuck, Matt? Is that how it's going to work this year?
I know that this first release is just the teams in alphabetical order, not ranked 1 to 10. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I thought after next week, when they do, I guess it would be after week 9, that they would start to release them 1 to 10. But I might not have that correct.
No, I think it's just alphabetical as far as I know, but I'm not 100% sure. So
Rank them.
Yeah. I'm going to have to work on my spelling and all those other good things. But because obviously I won't be able to anyway. So I'll just stick Ferg, you look like you're ready to make fun of me. Don't do it. But no, so it was my understanding that that's the way they're going this season. Obviously, we don't know the thinking behind it. If I'm guessing, It's probably because of the fact that they don't, they don't want to, at least at the very beginning, have to speak to why they're that way. I'm guessing. Because otherwise people do kind of have a fear that they look at it like standings, like why wasn't I at 6 when I was this last week or whatever it may be. So, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I just threw something on the screen. Inkblot watches this stuff, even closer than we do. He's backing up what I said after the first release, and the rankings would be 1 to 10.
So, perfect. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and look at last week's pick'em.
No, let's not.
No,
Let's do it.
Let's look at like week 4. I like that better.
So last week, wrong graphic. I went 3-2.
Oh gosh,
4-1, and Justin went 4-1. Congratulations. So Devin was tied with me, and then what we got? K Ferg 2-3, and Witt paying the price for his undefeated weeks, 1-4 last week. So
Fart noises.
Yeah, I could not have gone 5-0. Wayne State, almost pulled it out for me, but I blew that Kearney game. So again, I'm just middling all the time when it comes to the pick'em. So
that's back.
There's a comeback that needed, even though my Bears haven't been playing well. I seem to just pick a whole heck of a lot better with McMahon on my head.
Outstanding.
All right, so let's go ahead and look forward to this week. Let's look at the undercard games first. We got
hold on, Brandon. I'm having a hard time getting my head in the shot. But okay, yeah.
No,
we got the McMahon.
That's week to week, if I recall.
Any comments about his head?
That's week to week.
Pretend I didn't say any of that. Carry on.
All right, here's our undercard, guys. Sioux Falls be at Winona State. Tiffin will play at Ashland. Minnesota State at Augustana. Slippery Rock at California, and Mississippi College will play at West Florida. What's your thought on the Sioux Falls Winona game?
I honestly, I think all those are interesting games to kind of keep an eye on. The Sioux Falls game, the thing I think you need to keep an eye on is Winona State's very good at stopping the run. And that's what Sioux Falls likes to do quite a bit. And so I think Sioux Falls can be kind of forced to mix it up quite a bit. And they did that pretty good against Augustana. But at Winona, that's a real threat. I think all of us would have them winning that game, as we would probably with Augustana over Mankato. But definitely an interesting game to keep an eye out for.
Chuck, I think, of course, as a PSAC alum, you would have have the best grasp on the Slippery Rock California game. I wasn't impressed with California's win over Seton Hill. Does it feel like they're mailing in the season, or is there some disappointment there because they probably are out of playoff contention?
That was my take on it. Not that they mailed it in, but that was my take on it. Is they're probably just deflated. Their season just hasn't gone the way that they thought it would, and the way it could. So this game is interesting though, because this is really their last chance to make an impression. This is their last chance to really beat a good team this season. So I hope they'll be up for it. I hope that they'll make a really good game out of it. It's still a talented team, but the season's just really gotten away from them. So they need to show something this week. Right. They really need to show something. Another one here that I'm interested in is the Ashland and Tiffin game. Ashland's undefeated. Tiffin had a couple of losses earlier, one I didn't really expect, and one that was kind of expected. Ashland is an interesting team, though. They're still undefeated. If you watch their game against Ohio Dominican on Saturday night, your take on that might be different depending on whether you really value offense or defense. Their offense was awful. They couldn't do anything for the first half, but their defense just absolutely throttled Ohio Dominican. The second half, I think ODU had like 20 total yards. So their defense is very, very good. They've been as advertised, but they need to find a few things on offense. Their starting quarterback didn't play the first half last week for reasons we don't really know about. So they did pick it up a little bit in the second half, but that's going to be a tough game.
All right. Okay, let's go ahead then and look at this week's game. Let me get back to where I'm supposed to be, folks. Hold on just a second. All right, let me pull that down. And our pick 'em. I was trying to correct the spelling of Lenore Ryan before we started, and I was not able to. I noticed that there was a misspelling of that. So this week, I'm sorry, forgot to mention Mississippi College, West Florida. Mississippi College has had a good year, beating some good teams, but West Florida, I think, is going to win. I think West Florida is. Witt said it earlier, even before it probably was, really apparent to everybody else. But I think they're kind of figuring things out, and they look like they're going to be a really strong team in that super region as well. Real threat to come out of that super region. So in the pick'em, we've got Newberry at Lenore Ryan, spelled incorrectly. Central Washington at West Texas. Minnesota Duluth at Bemidji State. Texas A&M Kingsville is at Angelo State. And Central Oklahoma is at Washburn. Now, understand again that we pick these so we have good games and we try to split them. So if I have to hear about why Grand Valley at Saginaw Valley isn't one of the games we pick, it's because everybody would have picked Grand Valley. So I don't want to hear it from you Laker fans. Let's start with the SIAC game, guys. It's an important game. Newberry at Lenore Ryan. Chuck, this is going to decide the South Atlantic Conference, won't it?
Well, they do have a conference championship game for the first time ever at the end of the season. So it won't decide the conference championship, but it's going to go a long way towards the division. But don't forget, Wingett's still in that same division with these two as well. I like Lenore Ryan in this game. I think they have just been getting better and better as the season has gone on. I think we've kind of forgotten about them a little bit because, they got humbled by Ferris in week 2 and fell out of the top 25. And I think we've kind of forgotten about them. They've been a little out of sight, out of mind, but they have just been improving, getting better each week. And at this point, I think they are the favorite to win the SIAC. So I'm going to go with them in this game. Okay,
Devin, who are you picking this one?
I'm going to go with the Bears in this one. Give me Lenore Ryan.
Okay. K. Ferg, what do you got?
I just want to mention too that Lenore Ryan still has to play Tusculum, right, Chuck?
I can look that up real quick.
I think that they are in opposite divisions, but they would face each other in a championship scenario. And you're right, because you mentioned it. So if you want to talk about it, Tusculum is also 6-1.
Right. Yeah, that was the other thing. They lead the other division, so it could be that's the opponent. Who knows? But that's the way it looks right now.
Which would be interesting. Would be interesting because real quick on that would be interesting because the first time this actually will not be the first time the SIAC has had a conference championship game. During the spring COVID season, which was completely unconventional, they did a 4-game season and split in divisions, and Lenore Ryan and Tusculum actually played for the championship in that spring season. So,
and Tusculum
total
won.
non sequitur. Yes, they did.
Right. So Chris,
anyway,
who you got?
I am also going to go with Lenore Ryan.
Okay. Whit?
I like Lenore Ryan. As the others mentioned, I think that they've just been kind of coming on. I really do.
Agree. And I'm going to go with Lenore Ryan as well for 2 reasons. Number one, like everybody else, I feel like they just keep getting better and better. And number 2, it is because I have never been that high on Newberry as everybody else has been this year. And so I think that I just think Lenore Ryan is the favorite, and I think they're going to go away.
This is a little scary, though, because I will say, because I've covered the SIAC so closely, Newberry has an uncanny ability to lose when you don't expect it and win when you don't expect it.
They're like Valdosta State. When Valdosta State is ranked high to start the season, it's going to be a bad year. And when nobody thinks they're going to win, they're going to be at the championship. So,
yep.
Tony, if you had to pick somebody, who would you pick?
Yeah, I'd be taking Lenore Ryan in this game, too. I'm exactly where you are in that something about Newberry has not been particularly impressive to me throughout most of the season. In fact, I've actually, they would win games and I was dropping them in my poll. So I'm right there with you.
Okay, Devin, let's start with you. Central Washington at West Texas.
I'm going to go with Central Washington. Sorry, Chris.
All right. K. Ferg, who you got?
I don't expect anything less from you, Devin. Every time West Texas is out here, you always pick against them. I'm going to go with the Buffs in here. And you know what? It's really interesting. Both of these teams actually lost to Western Oregon. I can't believe it.
Yes, it's very disappointing yesterday, that result. Matt, who you got?
I think this one's a really tough one to call. We all thought that that West Texas would be better than they have been. But at the same time, I'm not real comfortable with Central Wash. So this is a hard one for me to take. I think I'm going to take the Buffs at home.
Okay. I'm actually going to go with Central Washington on the road. And Chuck.
I just don't have any confidence left in West Texas A&M. I had them in the top 25 to start the season. I was excited about the way they started, but I'm just out of confidence. I'm going to go Central Washington.
Okay. All right. Duluth at Bemidji. 5-2 Northern Sun teams. I'll pick first so we can end with Matt. I'm going to pick Duluth on the road. Okay, Chuck?
This is a real toss-up. I think Duluth has been underwhelming at times, but I'm going to take them in this game on the road.
Okay. Devin.
I went back and forth on this one a little bit. I decided to go with the home team here at Bemidji State. So I'll take the home team. I'm not overly confident about it, but I think they get the win. I
mean, that's why it's a good pick 'em. If you have to go back and forth, it's a good game to pick.
Yeah, the last game was an easy one for me. This one was harder.
I agree. I thought the last one was much easier for me too. Chris.
I'm going to go with Duluth. I think that, they've, even in their losses, they've played teams pretty closely. I know they've had some issues with injuries, but I like their chances on the road.
Okay. And Matt, tell us about this game and why we're all wrong or right.
I've been conflicted with this one. Duluth has really been playing some of their best football as they've gotten healthy now and are kind of blowing people out. And Bemidji, on the other side, is playing much better defense than they have in the last few seasons. And if they can play good defense, they're going to be a handful for people because their offense is, like the old San Diego Charger teams with Dan Fouts. But I am going to take the Beavers at home in this one.
All right. Texas A&M Kingsville and Angelo State. Matchup of 7-0 teams. Matt, let's go ahead and start with you. That would be fine.
We have it on here because it's 7-0 against 7-0.
Mm-hmm.
I just doesn't feel like it to me. And this is really a reflection of how close the games that Kingsville has had over the last handful of weeks against teams that we wouldn't have in the pick'em. And so I like Angelo State here by a few scores. And I mean, who knows, but I like them comfortably here.
I agree. I'm going to go with Angelo. Obviously, you knew I would pick that based upon my comments about Kingsville just, sliding by the second-tier teams in the Lone Star. So, Chuck, who do you got?
Angelo.
Okay. Devin?
Rams by 20.
Okay. And Chris?
I'll leave the disappointment to another A&M school. We're going to go with Angelo here.
Okay. Hey, Tony, because I am not very smart and because your name is not on the list, I failed to ask you about Central Washington and West Texas. Who you got?
Well, honestly, to me, I don't know what's left in the tank for West Texas A&M, but I think for Central Washington, a lot of that depends on whether Quincy Glasper plays or not. I mean, he's been missing the last couple of weeks, and I think they've lulled a little bit in their production offensively. So, to me, I guess you got to take West Texas at home, but if Glasper plays, then I might be more on a Central Washington bandwagon.
All right, and I also forgot you during Duluth and Bemidji.
I'd take Bemidji at home on that one, and then Angelo, obviously.
Right. Yeah, I think
everybody else.
Hey, Brandon. Yeah. On that Angelo game, it's interesting because we're looking at 2 7-0 teams, but even Massey's computer rankings has Angelo as a 21-point favorite in that game, which is kind of wild for a matchup of 2 7-0 squads.
I did say Rams by 20, so me and Massey think alike.
Devin, Massey, Albertson. All right, last game of the week, and we'll start with Chris. Central Oklahoma, at Washburn. 5-2 versus 4-3. This is a great pick.
There's a lot going on here. Especially Washburn. Pretty good offense, but they seem to let things kind of slip late, or they get behind and they're playing catch up. And Central Oklahoma was just kind of coming out the gate, and with that coaching change, it's just really paid dividends here. I'm gonna go with UCO on the road.
Okay. Matt.
This one is tough for a guy. I agree. Washburn, you just saw them obviously take Northwest to the limit. I think they're going to lose 2 straight games to Northwest. I think that the fighting Adam Dorrells, I think when they're 5th in a row, and I like them in this one.
All right. So UCO. Tony, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Whit here. I don't know that the Adam Dorrell factor can be undervalued, and I think they seem to be a little bit more consistent than Washburn is. And Devin's going to have a better opinion on that than I. But just from a distance, they seem to be more consistent, at least in what they're doing week to week, than what Washburn is. So I'll take Central Oklahoma.
Yep, I will go with the Broncos too. I think there's going to be a much like we talked about, Chuck, with Cal. There might be an elimination hangover a little bit with Washburn. They were a playoff team last year. There's going to be some disappointment from basically being eliminated. We've basically considered 2 lost MIAA teams to be theoretically eliminated at this point. So Washburn certainly knows they're out of it. I'll take UCO. Chuck?
This is a really good one for the pick'em. I mean, Central Oklahoma's really been coming on since they had that kind of head-scratching loss to Southern. They've won, 4 in a row since then, I think. So they're a real attractive pick here, but I'm actually going to go against the grain. I'm going to go with Washburn here. I do think there's that letdown effect, but I think that since the start of the season, the signs have been there that Washburn's probably not a playoff team. I didn't buy into them as a top 25 team at the start of the season, but I actually think that they have played pretty consistently. When you look at their results and look at who they've played at, I think they've played at a pretty consistent level. Still don't know if Central Oklahoma is really a week in, week out type of a team yet. So I'm going to go with Washburn.
All right, and Devin.
Okay, and what I'm kind of looking at this game, Washburn, they do have the number 1 ranked offense in the MIAA, scoring 35 points a game. The only problem is their defense is just not good. It's the second worst passing defense in the conference. The only team that's worse on pass defense is Lincoln. So not good company to be with on defense there for Washburn. And like Northwest, they've been throwing for 200 yards a game. Hohenty threw for like 330 there last week against them. It's just not a good defensive team. And if you're not good defensively, it's hard for me to kind of trust you week in, week out. They've had some close games. They lost to Emporia by 7, but they were down big in that game as well. Had to make a late comeback just to make it close. Central Oklahoma, ever since that week 1 loss to Missouri Western by 35-0, I kind of wrote them off at that point. Since then, I know they lost to Missouri Southern, but they beat Northwest and they beat Fort Hays last week and are falling behind early. That defense travels. It's the 3rd best defense in the conference this year behind Pitt State and Northwest. I think they're a very tough team. I think they got to win this game. Their next 3 weeks are tough. Washburn, Pitt State, Nebraska Kearney will be kind of the do-or-die stretch for Central Oklahoma. And they get a win this week. This is a big game next week at home versus Pittsburgh State. So give me Central Oklahoma in this one.
Very good.
You know, Brandon, we just talked about what Massey had in the Angelo game. What's interesting in this game is, of course, you know, that it has Central Oklahoma is the 4th best team in the country, and then Washburn the 5th. No, I'm just kidding, guys. But
let's go
because Massey, yeah. But they actually have Washburn winning this game by 8 points.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I know how much you trust Massey, Whit. So
I do.
All right, guys. Let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and thank our supporters, and then we will be right back after that. Just wanted to take this opportunity to thank those who have supported D2 Football this year. D2 Football is free, but it isn't cheap. Your support helps offset our expenses and allows us to expand our coverage. If you like what we're doing, please consider supporting us. Visit d2football.com/support. Or if you want to do it the old-fashioned way, click contact on the website to find our mailing address. But again, thank you for supporting D2 Football. All right. Also wanted to remind everybody to like and subscribe. Follow us on social media. Follow our columnists. These guys do a great job. So you can get scores on game days. And one other thing, we are looking for a producer. So if you're a person with a certain set of skills, not the Liam Neeson set of skills, but more the ability to produce some video, do some screen captures, do some graphic work, we would love to have you join and help us out to lighten our load some, because doing the show is pretty intense, a lot of work. It's about 48 straight hours of work between the scores and then getting in the show on, and it's time to add somebody. So if you know somebody or that somebody is you, please contact us. I will retweet the message about trying to get some help, and we're looking for a producer for Inside D2 Football. Also want to thank Fox 14 and WTLX TV, Fox 17, I'm sorry. They provide highlights for the show tonight. We ready to move to questions, gentlemen?
Yep. Sure.
Okay. Let me pull those up. And
I am single, in case that was in the mix.
Yeah. Well, we'll find your soulmate on here.
They don't want nobody who was 1-4.
Ferg, you had that sit in the holster. You couldn't get that out fast enough, huh?
Okay, let's
that's a steady.
Ferg, you're jealous of the bear head. I understand.
Chris, now that Valdosta is out of the picture, do you see a path in which the eventual CIAA champ can make a run at winning the region? So basically, I think the reality of this question is Virginia Union good enough?
Right, and I think so. I think they have this really strong rushing game. A lot of people talk about Jada Byers, but they don't know as much about the number 2 running back, Curtis Allen, who, also has quite a few touchdowns, and they kind of use him in the red zone quite a bit. So, I mean, he's got a different style of play, but he's just as effective. And I think a lot of that has to do with the offensive line. And I just think that, Virginia Union just has this mix that could work really well and keep games kind of close that gives them a chance.
All right, let's look at this one. Chuck, what is going on in the MEC as far as the playoff picture? Other than Concord and Charleston apparently deciding to play basketball based on the score.
Well, so for anybody that doesn't know what Bradley's talking about here, the final score of the Concord and Charleston game yesterday was 68-60. So wild game. I think Concord scored.
I doubted it. Like when that happens on live stats, often you think they're messing up or some errors happen. So that was incredible.
So it certainly was. So a great win for Concord because so they're 6-1 overall, 5-1 in the MEC. So I think somebody pointed out in this chat a while ago, one of the really interesting things is that Concord and Notre Dame do not play each other this year. So there's potential that they could both, continue on their current trajectory. Now, Concord actually has a better record overall, but they're both 5-1 right now in the MEC. So I think it's going to come down to those two, even though they don't actually play each other. But there's some other interesting things happening there. UNC Pembroke is still new in that league, but they're doing pretty well. They're 4-2. And Wheeling, which is a team that only started football in, I think, 2019, is 5-2. Now, are they going to be a playoff contender? No, they're not. But it's still pretty awesome that they're 5-2 in what's become a fairly competitive league in the top half.
Can I mention something here real quick? So that game was not the only game that both teams scored more than 60 points this past weekend.
Right.
McKendree and Quincy also went into overtime. And it was 63-62, and it was amazing. And the only reason why I'm thinking about this is because Turner Pullen was on the opposing person's fantasy team, and him and Reisdorfer and those guys sunk me. It's like every time they play me, they get the best score ever.
So Thorough put it to you?
Yeah. Okay. I just, unreal. So I thought we were cool. I thought we were like this.
Okay, so, hey, funny story, guys. After the Augustana game, before I leave, I chat with the coaches or what have you. The game hasn't been over for 2 minutes. One of the corners from Augie runs up to me and says, Logan Utek, who's their receiver who caught 2 touchdowns, had a 30-point game today. And I thought, bloody hell, Fergus, this is such a I said, you're looking for Ferg. But it immediately made me think of you, Ferg, as I was shaking my head. But yeah. Anyway, go on, Brandon. I'm sorry.
No worries at all. So let's look at this. Is Super Region 3 the toughest region in the bracket? You guys decide.
Yeah,
I think we've said each of the last 2 shows, but
it's gonna be the most competitive.
And we probably talk about that more often than we ought to, just in the interest of fairness. But it's what it is.
I kind of want to go to one of those playoff games this year.
Well, the way you travel, you'll be at one of the playoff games. All right, Chuck. Do you think that Benedict can compete with the top teams in the Gulf South?
Oh, Calvin, why are you doing this to me? Because I just said, Benedict, I believe in you, and now you're gonna you're gonna make me pay that. I think they definitely could contend with the top teams in the SAC, because honestly, I don't really know who the top teams in the SAC are this year. It's very competitive at the top of that league. The Gulf South, there was a question earlier about, because Valdosta is not very good this year, does that open the door for, the CIAA or the SAC? Are we forgetting about Delta State?
Right.
Good.
Yeah. Are we forgetting about West Florida?
Good.
Can Benedict, play with those teams? I think they could play with them. Come playoff team, I'm still not entirely sure Benedict has enough offense to win deep in the playoffs, but if they get to that point, they certainly will have earned the right to be there.
Okay. Eric says, the last time I saw, the last game I saw at Grand Valley that was this much fun was against those Angels from Northwest Missouri State in Florence, a heavyweight fight. Honestly, the last time that I remember 1 versus 2 was actually the 2006 championship game, Grand Valley Northwest. They opened the season 1 and 2, and it was just that way the entire time. And Grand Valley won by 4 or whatever. So
that was a great game.
No, that's a different year. That's a different year, fool. No, this is 96.
That was
I think he's talking about 2006. So.
I want a 98-yard run. Sorry.
Devin's talking about 2007.
I know, but we're talking about 1 versus 2, and I think that's what he's talking about.
It is
because that 2006 championship game.
Sorry,
was that game 17-14 in 2006? Tony?
Either 17-14 or 21-17. I think it was 17-14.
I
believe it was
14.
Somewhere I still have a picture of the scoreboard. I was at that game as well. I think it was 17-14.
I was there too, and I'm amazed that I don't remember what it was. I remember.
I think the previous year was 21-17.
If only there was a website where this information is available.
Gosh, wouldn't that be something?
Somewhere that's a resource for Division II football fans could get this kind of information.
Maybe we'll create one. All right.
Winner to Fowler to Salton. I remember that like it was yesterday.
All right. So Fayetteville only lost to Virginia Union by 3 back in September. Think we'd see another close game if there's a rematch in the championship game. Ferg, this is your wheelhouse. Knock it out of the park.
Yeah, I think so, because Fayetteville State's the one thing about Fayetteville State is their defensive line is really strong, and they're also going to give some fits, kind of like what Bowie State did. The problem is for Fayetteville is they don't really have enough offense against those top tier schools in the CIAA. So they're going to keep it close, and they're going to force Virginia Union to pass. But I think it will be a close game, but I don't know if they'll have enough in the tank to take over Virginia Union again.
Okay. All right. Joe says 2 GLVC teams. I have to think the eye test will kick it to one of them. Or basically kicking out one of them. Unfortunately, I don't think the eye test is real. I mean, maybe it is, but I just don't feel like it is. Matt, I believe you follow this more closely than I do. Do you think the selections are made on a pure numbers basis, or do you think there is an eye test that's applied?
No, I think it is. I think they use the criteria. I mean, remember before Lindenwood left for the FCS, there was talk that Lindenwood was going to get in, and there was a lot of people saying, well, I don't think they are as good on the eye test as some others. And that whole discussion, we've had that before. And I really think that goes by the criteria. And I think if things play out like we talked about, I think there's a real chance that you're going to see 2 GLVCs.
I think the only thing you might have, Whit, is and I realize that I'm kind of old, and I think of a lot of things back from when I wrote 10 years ago, but I had the good fortune to be able to get to know one of the ADs that was on the committee at that point in time. And one of the nuances he did explain to me was that each region has the ability within their own committee to apply the criteria in the way that they most see fit. So can you massage the criteria and what has more value than other components of it to try and fit that eye test? Maybe. That's still the criteria, but it may not get applied unilaterally from region to region.
I don't know what criteria would have Northwest, though, and the MIAA, to be honest, because I think what we're seeing right now is I think it's going to be like this big a difference in strength of schedule and things like that. I think that'll be the challenge. If it was really close, I think that would be more the case, but I think this could be a distance, guys.
And that could be right. I mean, you have to be able to create some plausible deniability, right, in terms of how you do that application. So if the numbers are too stark, you may not get away with it, but yeah.
All right. X24 wants to know: is it possible for a conference to not have a team in the playoffs? Yes. Earned access was a compromise in 2004. A number of leagues wanted to reduce scholarships to 24. It failed, but a compromise, or 2003. But the compromise was that they would expand the playoffs to 24. Blah blah blah. They tried to make it so that every conference champion would make it. Division II doesn't have – you have to have 75% participation by a school in the specific sport to have automatic bids. Football didn't have it. The earned access is kind of a compromise to that. That's why that rule is created, to say, hey, be pretty good. We'll figure out a way to get you in there. So it is possible for a conference not to have a team. Having said that, I think every effort is made to try to get a representative from every conference, but sometimes it's just not realistic.
Brandon, I just wanted to mention, because I'm going to show another question real quick that came up just overall about the process of how the rankings work, how the selections work. We'll talk a lot more about this. We actually do have a video in our library from last year where we snipped a part of one of these shows where we talked pretty extensively about the rankings process and the selection process. So that is out there. Anybody can go watch that. It's from October 26th, 2021. It's just called Division II Playoff Selection Process. So we kind of run through all the mechanisms and talk about how that works. I have some written material that I recycle every year, so that'll probably be out pretty shortly as well. So if you are new to it, or if you're still learning what the process is like and how it works, we'll definitely be here to help you understand it.
Yes, we will talk about it, but we are not going to break down how it's done again. You guys don't watch this show to go to school. So
yeah, we have the recording in it, so anybody can go watch that.
So, all right.
I want to mention real quick though. So like there have been instances where conferences have been left out, particularly the CIAA and the SIAC. And then I believe the Northeast 10 in recent memory had to use earned access to get in. So it does happen.
And the Northeast 10 didn't make it.
Right. Oh, that's right.
I think. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Yep. All right. I don't know right now. Is it possible for Notre Dame College to make the playoffs? What are they? Three? Are they 2 or 3 losses now?
Two.
Okay.
One is to a very good Ashland team, and the other is to Frostburg. So, if you go 9-2, and again, that's where even if it's really close, that's where potentially earned access works in their favor. I think if they're 9-2, best team in the MEC, probably.
Okay. All right. Let's go 2 more. I had this exact thought while you was talking about it. What kind of idiot has a wedding during a football season? My best friend had a wedding during the football season.
Mine too.
And I
tutor people on how to get out of weddings in the fall. I've been very successful at it. So I do have consulting services if you need help with that.
So last 2 years, I've had weddings, one on a Friday night, one on a Saturday during football season. One last year, I was actually in the wedding, so I had to be there, or the bride would have killed me. This year, we were watching the game during the wedding, for like the D1 games and the D2 games as well, at our tables. Open bar makes it a little bit easier to go to the weddings in the fall football season, but have a spring wedding, people.
You're supposed to have earbuds in, so nobody can know that you're watching the game.
Except when he goes, no! in the middle of the wedding.
It's funny. There was a guy at our table had a bunch of money on Tennessee money line versus Alabama, so he was very happy when Tennessee made that field goal because he made like $300 some bucks. So he was very happy at that point.
Elope, that's the real answer.
Yeah. All right. Here's our last comment of the day. The Winston-Salem State actually won a game this season against an opponent not named St. Augustine. Congrats.
There we go.
And St. Aug won too.
They did, yes. First one of the year.
There are no like winless teams in the CIAA now.
So to honor K Ferg, we're going to use HBCU Game Day's video. This is called the Winston-Salem Powerhouse Victory Circle. I was not aware of this. I am now, but congratulations. Get on that W line, Ferg. All right, guys.
Ferg, how was that? I think our audience missed that. Do that again.
One of the more unique venues where you could see a college football game. It's really pretty cool.
Followed by an auto race.
Yeah.
So, right. All right, guys. Well, that will do it for tonight. What a week of D2 football. We will see you next week, same time. Thanks to Chuck, Chris, Tony, Whit, Devin. Thanks for watching. We will see you next week on Inside D2 Football.